Regular meeting of the Swansea Board of Selectmen for today, September 14th is called to order.
I'll make a motion to approve the regular meeting minutes of August 31st.
Second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye. A motion to approve the non-public meeting minutes of August 31st.
Second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Public input. Do you have any comments or questions? Anybody online?
You have a couple folks online, so if you folks like to participate, you can unmute and address the board. Kristen, I see you're participating via Zoom. I provided the written comments that you emailed to me a few minutes ago or a little while ago. I provided a copy to each of the select board members.
Okay, thank you, Michael.
Hers is the 2 page.
Front and back.
Yeah, the one on your left hand.
Okay. Time at the moment, so. Anyone else? All right, first item on our agenda. Margaret, welcome. Go wherever it's convenient for you. Thank you.
Well, thank you, and thank you for having me. I'm Margaret Burns. I'm the Executive Director at the New Hampshire Municipal Association. I want to say thank you to Mike for inviting me. I just had my tour of this building and my tour of the town hall. So thank you. It's wonderful to be out here. I just wanted to kind of take a few minutes to both thank you for your membership with NHMA, but also to talk just briefly about what NHMA is doing, sort of the status and what's going on in our world over in Concord. So I think that most of you probably know that the major services that NHMA provides are legal services and advocacy. So legal services provide access to our attorneys for legal advice, but it also provides for training, workshops, and publications that we put on to help local officials do their jobs. Our advocacy services over at NHMA are focused on state legislature and putting forward policies and positions that are entirely based on our membership. So as some of you may know, we have our legislative policy process going on right now. Our legislative policy conference is next Friday. And this is essentially the NHMA town meeting where our members come to Concord, come together and vote on what the policies and positions will be of NHMA for the next biennium of the legislature. So for 2023, 2024. Our staff are entirely directed by our members. We are an entirely membership-driven organization, and the policy conference is one of those key components to NHMA doing the job that we do on behalf of the members. As some of you may also know, at times the legislature is a challenging place for local government officials. Oftentimes, bills that are targeted at local government are bills that seek to take away power from local government, or in practical effect, they don't work at the local level. And so not only having NHMA staff there to work with legislators and put forward the positions of the members, it's really crucial that local officials themselves engage as well with NHMA and with the legislature to really educate on what the issues are at the local level and how things play out at the local level. And so anytime I get a chance, I encourage local officials and boards to be speaking directly with their senators and their state reps, to be inviting them to select board meetings, to talk to them about the issues and talk to them about legislation that's important, sending written testimony on bills that are important, and even occasionally, if it's possible, coming to Concord and testifying on a bill that is of importance. Our success at NHMA is purely based on the strength and engagement of our members. And that's why we have sort of the strength that we have with all 234 cities and towns part of the process and pushing our policies forward. So I just really want to say that, thank you for your membership. And if any time there's something that you feel NHMA can do for you, if you have questions about what's going on, we really want to hear from you, and we want to help you both at the local level, but we also want to help you engage in the legislative process, which can be overwhelming, daunting. We follow more than 300 bills every session. That's how many bills are filed that relate to local government. And that doesn't even include the state budget process, which also applies to local government. Before I close out and let you continue with your meeting, I just want to note that last year there was legislation that would have essentially prevented local officials from working with organizations like NHMA to put forward policies and to advocate at the legislature. That bill, that anti-advocacy bill for local government, is coming before us again in 2023. So this is a recurring issue that local officials face year after year. So again, it will be a really important year for all local officials to engage with their legislature and to talk about the practical effect of some of this legislation. But it's not all bad news. Some of you may be aware too that in this past year there was additional state aid funding provided to cities and towns in the form of additional highway block grant money, bridge aid funds. The legislature passed a one-time reimbursement for the New Hampshire retirement system cost as well. And in 2021, there was a bill passed to also increase the municipal distribution of meals and rooms tax, which has been a long time issue that NHMA and its members have been fighting for the legislature. So although we do see a lot of bills that really challenge local government, positive legislation does happen too. And when local officials reach out, send testimony, talk to their reps and senators, it really does make a difference. So anytime we can help you better engage, answer your questions, or serve you here in Swansea, please just let us know. Mike knows how to get in touch with us, but hopefully you all know how to get in touch with us as well. And I also want to say thank you to Mike for being so engaged with NHMA. Definitely need more folks in local government like him. So it's great to work with him. And anything you need from us, please let us know. Happy to take any questions, hear any input, receive any comments you may have about NHMA.
Which building did you like better, this one or the town hall?
I don't know. Mike took me up to the clock,
Yeah.
which was pretty cool. So I might have to vote for this building.
Goodness.
Smart vote. Yeah, and just to return, the compliment that NHMA is under a great direction with Margaret's leadership. We've utilized the trainings, as I think all the board members certainly know. Beverly, you've attended probably all of them at one point. We had a few on-demand trainings during COVID for our land use boards. So just can't say enough positive about the direction and the team you've put together. Because I think a lot of the staff has turned over since you've been there. We were happy you let Cordell retire because now he's working for us part-time too.
I heard that Cordell is working with the town as well. And I'm sure you know that Cordell was with us for 18 years. And when you have turnover and retirement of such a significant individual in an organization, it's a huge deal. But we have great staff who have come in and carried on with really no change, no bumps in the road. And I'm really grateful for that. I did bring some copies of the final legislative bulletin. Maybe you stayed up late at night reading it, you just couldn't get enough of it. Maybe not, but I did bring a few copies, Mike, for you and the board. Every week we put out a bulletin on Friday. Every week of the legislature, we put out a bulletin that talks about the biggest things that happened that week and the biggest things that are coming next week. And the point of the bulletin is to inform you as members what's going on and to try to sort of keep you up to date so you know what's happening with the legislature. At the end of the year, we do a final bulletin where we summarize everything that passed. And really, we want you to be engaged through the process, but at the end of the day, the important thing is to know what laws have passed that affect you in your daily operations, and that's what the final bulletin is.
Yeah, the bulletin is really helpful at keeping track of what's pending. I know Sly and I went to Concord a couple of years ago to testify on the state aid grants for the wastewater projects that had been semi-funded, and then the funding got taken back. So I think that was something you guys helped work to get resolved, but it's impossible for us to keep it straight without these notices. So we really excellent.
I just put in a plug for Attorney Buckley. Stephen's just been a tremendous advocate and a strong sense of support from him with his, the moderators workshops that he does. And he's always receptive and responds to phone calls and emails, and the classes that he did for us during COVID were especially helpful. I wish more of our people had taken advantage of them, but we did have a good group who did. I think more of that would be helpful, and we plan to take advantage of the training in October, which we're hopeful we'll get a good response from our own members. But we appreciate that you're doing that. I'm just curious, what would be the logic behind a bill that would eliminate your role as an advocate for the towns?
Thank you for asking that, and I'll pass those comments along to Steve. The anti-lobbying legislation comes back usually every 2 years. Now we're about to see it 2 years in a row. It's been happening for about a decade, and there's usually a lot of misinformation and misunderstanding surrounding the issues that motivate the bill. What you'll hear from proponents of the legislation is that we need to stop taxpayer funds from being used to influence legislation, right? So it's a very broad statement that taxpayer funds should not be used to fund lobbyists, period. And the problem with that argument, there are a lot of problems with the argument, but one of the main problems with that argument is that local officials have the same free speech rights as any citizen to go and participate in the legislative process. And essentially what NHMA does, or an organization like NHMA, is we become a conduit for all of the thousands of local officials in the state at the legislature. And the idea that thousands of local officials across the state would be able to follow hundreds of bills and also go to the legislature to be engaged in the process is just not practical and inefficient. But the argument that we keep hearing is that no funds should go to influence legislation at all. Other arguments have simply we've also seen that at times it is an issue of legislators who sponsor those bills not preferring the positions that the organization takes on behalf of local officials. So individuals who don't like the positions of local government wanting to retain its power and state funding and all of those positions, they're not in favor of that. And that can also be something that motivates the anti-lobbying legislation. There's also a statute at the state level that prohibits the state from giving money to an organization and then that organization turning around and using that money to influence the state, right? There's this idea that there's an ethical issue with that. And legislators have at times tried to conflate that with the ability of local government to raise their own funds and be part of a membership organization. Those are two very different things.
Sure. Okay. I'm all set. Do you have a sense of the Land Use Appeals Board, whether that's going to continue to be attacked or whether it's settling in?
My sense is it's probably settling in. There were two bills last year, one to repeal it and one to refine the jurisdiction of the appeals board. Because I think people have recognized that putting aside personal opinions about whether that board needs to exist, that the language in the statute about the jurisdiction is a little broad and can be subject to interpretation of what appeals exactly they're allowed to hear. So I wouldn't be surprised if it's one of those things every once in a while you see a bill come out to do something with it or to repeal it. But my sense is the overriding opinion is that it should be left to do its job and see if it has a positive impact on local decisions related to housing.
Thank you. Slide. Anyone have any questions of Margaret?
Can I just say-
Sure.
I just want to thank you guys for the webinars we put out.
Great.
I take the right to know laws when there are new laws, and I also took the new laws on the land use boards. Very, very helpful for conducting our meetings, our local meetings. So thank you. Don't give up on them.
We won't, and really, thank you. COVID, we had always done monthly webinars, but COVID forced us to do more virtual, right? And to give it a try and see if our members liked it and attended and responded. And now we've gone to hybrid events where normally we have an in-person part and a virtual part. And we continue to see more folks come in virtually than in person. And it's, we don't want to do away with the in-person because there's a benefit to it, but it really, it's reaching all parts of the state in a way that the in-person events couldn't. People can't travel.
It's a distance from here to Concord.
Exactly, yeah. So that's what we're.
Well, thank you,
Thank
Margaret.
you.
We hope you know how much we appreciate that you made the effort to be here and came to join us and spread the word. You guys are doing a tremendous work and we appreciate the advocacy.
Thank you, I will.
Thank you.
Have a
Good,
meeting.
thank you.
Swansea Cal Ripken. Lane Field Improvements. John, how you doing? Good, thanks. Good version.
I think he's bringing the largest version.
You got it. I'll say it.
I got it memorized.
I got it memorized.
You're gonna memorize it. All right.
All set? Where do you reach my status?
Can request them to be as small as possible.
Oh. Say there was some success there.
Back from the last Thursday, Wednesday. We met with the planning board. And the conditional approval based on meeting 7 elements. That we have that letter. This is in the letter, I should say. Just looking at the letter from the planning board.
We have the minutes.
Oh, okay.
I do have some extra copies if anyone in the public didn't get that.
So. So. Look at it. I'll go over the 7 points after I've gone over the general aspect of the plan. So I think it was in June or July that I came to the selectmen originally about some renovations. And some discussion about some safety factors, et cetera, et cetera. And then we referred to the planning board and they asked us to address a number of things, safety wise. So that being said, the crux of the plan is that we showed these exact drawings. Nothing has been updated. The 7 elements are not on there, which I'll go over via the letter. We can highlight them. But the basic gist of this is that we remove the internal, as we prefer to record. from the middle of the ballpark, taking all that parking and added it to here with a tremendous amount more. So about 50% increase in the parking overall. We eliminated all the parking, and as a result of removing this corridor in the middle, was taking these two fields, which originally played from out here or from here, and made them play together back to back from here out to the hillside. And that's all reflected in the current map over there. The fields then become pretty well outlined in a, not a picket, but a split rail fence to delineate aspects along with a lot of the parking signs, gates, so on and so forth. During the whole meeting, there was a lot of discussion about a lot of different elements to this. And if you have any questions right now, I'll be glad to answer them, or I can just go right into the 7 elements. Okay, so the 7 elements that wanted to be addressed. Number 1 was that we take the road that Joe, which did Public Works, as well as Eric Madsen, fire, talked about, which is basically here to here, and it will no longer be a road, it will be grass. So it'll be a grass area. Gates, we don't have any gates delineated on here at all for the access to the field. And I was asked to show a gate in here somewhere. I'll put a line there, that field, and a line on this field somewhere. Those gates get to be determined, but as I promised, we will outline and we will put all the gates to all the fields as well as to the parking on the revised map that we're working on. Move the parking lot at the west entrance, which would be here. So there was some concern here that there wasn't any spectator space between this fence and this parking lot. So it's going to get shifted around a bit. How? I don't know, but it's going to get shifted. Chad and his team are handling that. I feel stone land management to meet the desire of the folks there. I inverted that. So this one's going to get done. This is bullet number 4. Number 3 was down here to take this entrance and move it over about 30 feet to the west. So kind of this neighbor's driveway, so not lining it across the front. The 75-foot fence extension that we plan to do when we start the project here, we'll go in this section here, that'll be delineated. We have to return for a compliance hearing. Then we have to get a driveway permit from the state DOT. And the state DOT. The state DOT has been very supportive of the project. I know they've met with Michael. I know they've talked with Joe, they've talked with Chad and Fieldstone about it. And I think they've agreed to make that whole road almost no parking on either side to help this project and help with safety. Because in the big picture, this is all about, this is driven by safety. And I have to say, putting folks at ease when they come to the facility, whether it's for soccer or for baseball in that regard. So those are the elements. And I'll be glad to answer any questions that you may or may not have. That I can't answer. I don't know how the answers.
Could you show again where the extension of Butt Drive is and where the elimination of the center road is? Your back was to me, so I couldn't.
Sure. I apologize for that. So this is the maintenance building. These are the batting cages. So it's gonna, the grass area will begin somewhere in here. We'll have some sort of a continued drainage along the front of that proposed batting cage that has not yet been built. There'll be no car traffic going through, only with 2 vehicles or a tractor or a lawnmower or something.
How far?
I think he has a gate here, so the gate's here, but we'll see how it goes.
So basically that road goes away. And how far to the west?
I think Chad has 12 parking spots in here, and there's a post gate right there, so to the west of behind the new dugout.
Is there any need to use that space? for anything?
Um,
You
so,
mentioned emergency vehicles, but could they come in off of Mill Lane or?
so they can, and I'm not gonna debate the issue. Joe and Eric have been to the site as well, many of you. That area can sustain a fire truck without getting sunk. It's sand, it's really compact. There's many ways to get to the place. I hate to joke about it, but as the fire department said, by the time they get there, if there was a fire in the cook shed, we'd have cinder blocks. It wouldn't, there's not much wood to it except for the addition we built. But for somebody getting hurt, this we could, what do they call them? Knock boxes, right? Knock boxes, are gonna be put at the gates for the fire department. I'm not familiar with them, but I guess every commercial building has them, we were told. That was one thing I remember from Company. So they'll be there and over here for the gates. They could get in here very easily. In terms of parking, there'll be some gates in here to protect area. So yes, they could. But I mean, I think what it really boiled down to in terms of eliminating the road was a conversation about aesthetics. That was, I think that's a fair comment.
I brought it up for a safety issue too. A lot of times kids will go zipping across that back row of cars. There's really no reason for vehicles to be going through there. The entire site is gravel and sand, so if you put loam on it, they can drive in there with a fire truck. They're not going to get stuck. So in the event for utility reasons, you can drive across there, but it will eliminate cars coming across while kids are out there playing. It'll give more space for that. And financial note, all that gravel can be utilized in the parking lot out front. It can be removed and replaced out front.
Other comments?
What was the extension of the fencing?
75 feet. So, in the comments last week, they said it was 4 years ago. I don't remember being it 4 years ago, but I could be very wrong. We agreed to extend the fence. We didn't have enough time, and what extra material we did have, we used over here at the pavilion. And I think it's 7 or 8 posts that have to be put in by the Monadnock fence. And I will say that I've dragged my feet on it just so that we can have, when the truck comes, they can pour other things. So it hasn't been done, but it'll get done sometime this fall.
So it's going north?
It's going north.
So
Yeah, it's going on the easterly side, going up Putt Drive on the way to PJU. Yes.
When you have the tournaments and things with the big tour buses and stuff like that, where are they gonna unload?
We haven't had any tour buses. We had one RV this past year. And we're gonna discourage it at all costs and make sure there'll be no blown events, there's no RVs allowed.
Okay.
So that was, the RV ended up parking, that is the one with the trailer RV ended up parking over here. The other one ended up parking over here, and they were asked to leave because they decided to use their grill.
So is the pushback on this design with the conditions, or has this been pretty well accepted?
So there's some challenges to this. The number one challenge is the public, the neighbors would like to see this outside perimeter fence be temporary, so the kids can sled down the hill. That's number one. Number two is working with the rec department to see if operationally we can move this larger soccer field program entirely to Cutler. Because the challenge that we have today, our number one complaint of parents, whether it's soccer, I believe, or of baseball, would be the dogs defecating. And how do we make it so it's not a dog park? And if rough estimates, material wise and some labor costs, the project will probably be between $250,000 and $300,000. And my perspective, as I said last week, is that it's an enclosed facility, so that we can not have dogs on the fields and not have that issue. And I know I've talked to Ashley about it, Michael and I, we've all met. Joe was there. we'll look for your support on how we go about doing that. But it's not just for this facility. I'll be very honest, it's not just for this facility that I like to see the dogs off the fields. The places I'd love to see it around. I know she hears it the same. And I don't want to speak for her, but we got to fix the problem. And however we get the help from the select board or whatever, that's my biggest concern. So as I talked with Ashley, this field is very tight. I would like to see this field fully enclosed and this field fully enclosed. But that means that this field, and these kids, which are, I think it's 8 to 12 or 9 to 12 or 10 or 11 to 12, whatever, that group would entirely have to play 4 nights a week at Cutler in order to do it. So that's the only discussion that hasn't been finalized. Best case or worst case, I guess, from my perspective, was that we didn't close it with a fence here as well as a fence up there, which is not ideal, and they use temporary fences to accommodate soccer. But this way, we can try to keep the dogs off the fields.
Is there any shifting south that could be done that would accommodate that field?
Not really in terms of overall space, in order to accommodate the access for safety and everything else, whether it's hollow walls, et cetera, et cetera. It's already, this road is today over here. We've already shifted it. I'm gonna say, Joe, maybe 35 to 40 feet. I could be wrong. And these fields are trying to get as close to Calvin fields that was discussed last week as possible. And as you see, this one here has 220, which is ideal. And this one here is at 200 and then goes to 220. Which would be a tad bit bigger than what Cole is today. As I believe Cole, sorry, that's 203 and that's 205, so it's about 20 feet. And that's why you have a big netting you can pull up.
Any questions? Slide.
Could we compromise and fence in half of them and not fence in the other half, half the fields? Not fence in the other half.
But still is not going to accommodate soccer.
Oh, there's no fence.
But you can't do one or you wouldn't fence it either one at that point.
No, I'm not talking about the back fields. I'm talking about the front fields. The front fields can be all fenced in. But the back fields,
The problem is you have a lot of sponsors and a lot of people, you're going to go ask for $300,000 and you're going to have a half built home. Or you're going to have, it's going to be really tough. Because we're vast. And it's a challenge.
well, I'm not saying no fencing. I'm just saying,
But there's no way to keep the dogs off without fence.
right,
Plus
that's what I'm
some
saying.
sort of- But some sort of a help here from you folks as well. So if you're gonna put lots of money into it, you're gonna have to solve the dog problem. And I think we like the dog problem to go away, not only in baseball, but in soccer in general.
If you have a gate and a fence, the dogs are gonna be in there.
And that's what everybody said. So we need something from the select board to say that it's $100 fine. Your dog goes out there on that field. We can go build a dog park somewhere else. This is a youth athletic facility. That's my perspective. And that's what we're gonna have to sell it as in order to get people to donate and raise the money. And that's been the number one complaint is the dogs. I understand the sledding aspect. I hear it loud and clear. I don't deny it. Same point in time, things change going forward, trying to make a better, safer facility. That's my perspective,
Anybody have, Ashley?
Well, so I'm with you on the dogs and with that though, I ran into a lovely couple on Tuesday that came here specifically because our fields are fenced in nicely and they have a water spigot on it. They drove from Winchester to just let their dogs run. So yeah, the dogs are a continuous ongoing problem and I feel like more fencing may encourage more dogs down the road. I ideally would like to see the soccer field stay here or have no physical room to add an additional field at Cutler. So by eliminating this one, it eliminates me to just one soccer field for that nature. it's gonna make it hard. It would have to be a multiple day a week program where the kids would be rotating, it wouldn't be a set schedule. It'd be a little more than what I have to teach as kind of like a recreational activity or that way. Travel team all-star type rotation where they're gonna have to be there. There would be a whole week for their whole time frames to get them all through. We only have one field.
So John, if the issue is the dogs from a fencing standpoint, and if the fencing both deters and encourages, we can certainly put a sign up. That I don't see any issue with that, having had the experience of what you're talking about. But realistically, if on the one hand it deters and on the other hand it encourages, what's the benefit?
Well, if you put some sort of fine in place.
We could do that, but if it's still going to attract people to the facility, we'd have to figure out a way to
Couldn't you
enforce it.
designate one field for the dogs?
We're not,
Most of the dogs that I've ever seen down, that I've seen some, are on that field closest to Mill Lane. And there's always an adult. Doesn't, so once you have a leash law, you're not gonna find any dogs running wild out there. And they're trying to get into the field. They come with their owners,
that don't clean up.
they go through the gate, and let the dogs run around, and I'm sure they're defecate. And little I know of it, most of them pick it all up. And I know of people that go down there and they find others, and they pick up others. So,
Absolutely. One of your neighbors is very good at it.
So, just. I don't have, personally, I don't have any chip in the pot, but it just seems to me that it would be that simple.
I think there's
I mean,
something.
put signs all around the others that say no dogs, and one says dog welcome here, and you've only got 1 out of 5 or 4 that you could have a problem with. I don't know. But that seems simple. And the other side, the other thing with the kids sliding. There's only 60 feet. Where they slide over there's just a strip. About 60 feet wide where they're allowed to go down a hill and slide into West Field in the middle of the winter. And I know of no dogs that are going to be out there in that area climbing through 2 foot of snow to defecate in a spot over there when they can go right in the snow bank right beside my house or something.
So I agree with you. I agree.
I think it's being used as an excuse to do what you want. I don't feel that it's a major problem. I think you did a hell of a job with that rework.
So
But it just,
can you see it or no?
huh?
I already saw that.
Okay.
So here's the challenge of it. I shared with some folks.
Okay.
And I was out talking. We removed this 60 feet, then we removed this 150 feet. So this 150 feet, there's nothing here now.
No, you don't need to remove that.
It's not here. This doesn't exist.
Huh?
It doesn't exist.
Okay.
So then this here is like not even 100. So what's the point? Just make it all temporary. And on a yearly basis, that'll be about $5,000.
You get it.
Oh, sure. Okay. I mean,
Well, I just.
I hear.
I don't have to tell them to go over there and slide either. I don't plan on it this way.
But John, I hear you loud and
It just seems that these things are simple solutions, but we don't need to spend hours on it and have high feelings and this, that, and the other. It's just,
So a simple solution for me is operationally soccer moves off that field. And we'll leave the 60 feet out. Operationally, I have no problem with that. And then we fully enclose this field.
why doesn't, why Don't you do it? Yes.
because I don't have the support.
But Andrew, that would limit me to one soccer field.
Right, so I.
It limits me to one soccer field for that age. Let's do that.
so I would take-
I don't want that to limit.
Richard,
I can see the kids down.
John. Excuse me,
I have nothing against
John.
the kids. It's a-
John,
I'm
excuse me,
sorry,
excuse me. Richard has the floor.
a couple of points, excuse me, Rick and Lane from the planning board. The covenant giving the properties to the town of Swanson stated that it is designed or given to the town for recreational use. Did not say specifically baseball fields, did not say specifically soccer or lacrosse or whatever. It's for recreation. If we fence it in, then we've eliminated a number of the other potential things that can go on. Our recommendation, which is in the notes, the planning board, is that that fence be a temporary fence. Specifically to allow the use of that hill for sliding. The outrun from that hill, for most of the kids, once the snow's back down, is anywhere from 70 to 80 feet. But right now, that 70 to 80 feet is going to run right square into a fence. So that's the reason why we asked for the selectmen to consider that section be temporary. Secondly, the first, back in July 28th, the proposal that was shown to us and that we voted on waivers for was nothing like what we got here. And I talked to a couple of individuals asking whether or not we had committed a reversible error. And so doing what we did the last Thursday, approving the conditions, not going back and starting from square one, because this plan here is entirely different than the one presented to us on the 28th. And we are currently awaiting some research to be done. And my request would be that the selectmen please postpone your decision until we can find out exactly if we have committed a reversible error or things and bills as they are.
Would that be number 6, the compliance hearing?
Yes. The compliance is, needs to be up to me, numbers 1 through 5 and number 7.
But my point is, we, after this plan was presented, we made a list of things that we wanted to see on the plat. And the compliance was prevented back in. My question has been, were we incorrect in allowing an approval of this presentation or this plat without going back and reopening everything because it is entirely different? The location, the only three fields that are still the same are the ones to the south end of the emergency access between the two complexes, the north complex and the south complex. Everything else is different.
To be clear, your request and your opinion you're sharing is your own. That's not from the planning board meeting, correct?
Correct. That's why, I say that I'm asking for direction from individuals as to whether or not we did a reversible error.
Appreciate that. I just wanted to confirm that it was just your opinion, not, you aren't here on behalf.
I am not here on behalf. No, I'm here as the great grandson of the person that gave this land to this town started.
Anyone else have any questions?
So the initial plan, if I recall, was no parking lot down here. The parking lot was up in the upper left.
If I may,
That's
the
what my,
the July 28th plat had parking up here, this field was eliminated. Ryan is coming this way. This still had lane field in here, these others here. This existing parking area was turned. And we were discussing having like a line to delineate the parking spaces here. So none of this was presented to us. This was not presented to us. And obviously none of this.
Initially, but then it was presented.
It was presented last Thursday to us. But as I say, our approval of waivers was based off of the July 20th presentation.
And the reason that the waivers would have changed.
Reason is that you changed the plaque and the layout of the whole thing, and we've come across this with Blackley, and they changed all of their layout of their development. We asked them to come back in and start from scratch with their application, new application. I think, this is, I would like to see that, but I've got, like I said, I've got questions out as to whether or not we have the right to do that, or if we have to.
Would you agree that the planning board asked us, they didn't like the plan really, and they asked us for a longer term plan and a plan that was more inclusive and delineated and added more parking? Would that be a fair statement?
We have to go back, I think, absolutely, to look at the units. But we did mention, I believe, the parking safety issue. In fact, I believe I brought up the issue on the corner of Mill and South Road. And your plat at that time had that in there, and what I showed you up on the hill on Westfield.
Right, 60 or 80 spots up there, correct?
Pardon me?
60 or 80 spots up there.
Yes.
Right.
And there was no, you had eliminated Westfield. So, and you hadn't relocated your emergency road there, and that's more than 40 feet, what you've done now. It was the existing fence line on Westfield to the north edge of the existing road is 28 feet. Okay, so you moved that, all of that beyond the wellhead. So
Correct.
So we've done, a major move there. Again, all I, as my own personal request is that the selectmen postpone any action on this so I can get some answers as to whether or not the planning board
Show that
created an error.
This is a copy.
It was my
Originally
understanding
accepted.
of all the discussions, that the chair ruled that wasn't going to be, wasn't applicable. Is that incorrect or correct?
He was under the, I think his statement said that, and this is in reference to another individual in the audience, about putting in some hedges or something along the road, that we had given waivers, from the July 28th meeting, and that we couldn't go back on those. And that's, as I say, that's where I'm raising the question. So whether or not we created an error, we're still doing.
So my question to you is simple as, you'd rather see the parking here and have lane field here? Is that what you'd like to see?
That's not my question. My question is a technical question to you.
But what you asked for is what you got in terms of the layout. If you want us to go backwards, we'll go backwards. But if nothing's gonna get done. Zero.
That's not my.
I understand where you're driving, and you made the comment that you wanted to keep lane field, and I get it,
So that was, you're referring referring to the July, to the last meeting, John, that was just.
I get it, but I get it, but I get the whole.
John, we need to run things through the board. But I think that from our perspective, Richard, is when I read this plan, my assumption was it came about as a result of the original planning board meeting. I looked at this plan, I thought it was a brilliant, actually, rendition and a significantly improved version of what had been originally presented. I think that we can't, in my opinion, act on your request because the planning board did not act on your request. The planning board chair brought the decision through. You all reached agreement on these seven conditions, and that's what we have to work with.
My request wasn't made in Thursday meeting. But I'm talking within the town about whether or not we created a reverse there. This is something that I've been thinking about since that point.
So you as a board, I mean, I don't really know the law with regard to the planning board. If it was a zoning board decision, Richard as a zoning board member could request a rehearing. The statute is kind of unclear with regard to planning boards. My assumption, my understanding is that those decisions can only be appealed directly to Superior Court or the Land Use Appeals Board. Do they have the ability to rehear?
Sarah might be able to answer better, but I'm not familiar with the request to rehear.
But that's really what Richard is asking for. Is
Michael? Michael, it's Kristen. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
I just wanted to add that in the minutes from the planning board meeting last night where there was discussion about the waiver and the waiver was granted. I think part of that was because when I got up, I asked for a reset and said, you know, this is a dramatically different application. You know, perhaps we should reset and start over and go through the checklist and make sure that whatever waivers were given would still be given based on this new plan, which I don't think anyone necessarily disagrees with the new plan. It's just about following the process that anybody else would have to follow. So I just wanted to clarify that I believe most of the comments around from the chair around the waiver and we can't go back on a waiver was probably directed more at me as a member of the public asking for that and not necessarily someone else from the board. And then also, if you can tell me how I can best, when I have a question or whatever, let you know. I don't want to interrupt anyone, but I have had a few questions and I don't know the best way to do that through the Zoom thing. So if you can let me know how to best do that, that'd be great.
Yeah, based on where the plan is, I'm not sitting at my computer, so if you're raising your hand or typing in the
Yeah.
chat. I think
Okay.
in case we let you just jump in as needed.
Okay, I'll do that. And if it's not the right time, tell me to wait. Thank you.
So did the planning board make a decision at the last meeting? Okay, I respect your position, but that's what we have to work. And it can all be unraveled if it needs to be, but it seems to me that the board made a request for revisions. A revision was brought in. Whether the board followed its checklist or not that's not within our purview. I don't believe. We had our planning director there. If there was some issues, she could have interceded and made sure that the proper process was followed. But I think for our purposes, unless the board overrules me, which they certainly can do, I think this is what we're dealing with. And I
What if the revision?
just need your name for.
She knows me by now, I do. What if the revisions don't include everything that was in the first one?
This is what we're dealing with. The first plan that went back to June has been completely revised
But
significantly.
it's supposed, there's supposed to be something on here that was on the first one that isn't on here.
Which is the first? Are you talking about their first plan in June?
What is that? Building that, the announces. What do you call it?
Announces building or
That they're supposed to have, that wasn't on, isn't on this one now. That he said just wasn't in there yet.
Right.
Yeah, but we haven't found a location for it, so we removed it.
I'm sorry,
As I said last time, we haven't found a location.
I can't hear you.
We haven't found a location for it, so we removed it.
Yes, but it's not on the,
It's not being planned.
Yeah.
They don't have a plan
but
to,
it's on the first one.
but the plan that we're working with is this one here. This is the plan that was approved with conditions by the planning board. It does not,
This is last week.
Then it's gonna have to go all through the whole system again, right?
if they wanted to add an announcer's booth, there was some language in there with regard to the usage of the announcers for playoffs. And I believe it was introduction of players only, as I read it.
There's nothing in here from the planning board or
No, but in the minutes,
in the site.
in the minutes, in the minutes.
Plan or anything else.
No, I understand, but in the minutes, Mr. Holden was quoted as stating how the announcing would be utilized. If they want to add an announcer's booth, another structure, then yes, at this point, they would need to go through the planning board process. I also want to make clear that the decision to require the Cal Ripken program to go through the planning board process, that has not been settled.
Right.
We've agreed in order to allow the process to allow them to move forward. But there is dissension with regard to whether or not they're a governmental agency or a private entity. So that part hasn't been settled, but they've agreed to go through the planning
My
board
concern,
process,
Bill,
and they're doing it.
The last time we did this. And you approved everything. None of that, not all of it, some of it was not done. Okay? And we don't have any recourse.
In this case, you do, because in this case, they're following the planning board procedure. And the planning board has required 5 conditions, a 6th one, including the DOT. And they're required to go back to the planning board in order to initiate their plan. So they have to show on their plan compliance with these conditions. And if they don't show compliance with these conditions, they won't be given the building permit and the proper permitting to move forward. But I haven't heard anything from John that would indicate they have any concern with these conditions.
I don't have any problem with that up there at all. I'm not sure that's gonna be what we have when we get done. That's what that's my problem,
It will be,
because it wasn't the last time. When I went to about a dozen meetings and talked with all you people and hollered and screamed and all this other stuff. I've mellowed, so.
we appreciate that, John.
Is there any area 11 now?
John, is there anything
I'm
missing?
allowed to, right?
Is there anything missing here, John Blood? Is there anything missing here?
I'm sorry,
Is there anything missing? Have we omitted anything?
not that I can think of. I think you did a good job.
Can I ask you, in particular, what do you feel that we omitted to do last time when we built the maintenance center?
You didn't turn Westfield into a parking lot.
Oh, you're talking about the first set of plans in June.
Yeah.
You're not talking
About 5 or 6 years ago, everything was approved. We don't need. And then you're gonna do it.
Well, we're in a new era.
I'm sorry.
We're in a new era. You've mellowed. He's mellowed.
I'm
They're-
getting this down because I want to throw it in his face in a couple of years.
It's not gonna happen, John. They are gonna follow this plan. And if they need to make adjustments, they're gonna go back to the planning board to get those adjustments. Otherwise, they have to meet these 6 criteria. And they have to show compliance with the plan, which they will do. And I'm sure that we can rely on you.
You're saying trust me, right?
No. I'm saying we trust you to come back to tell us if they miss one of the conditions. They will need them.
I shall leave you at this point.
Why? The fun is just beginning.
He's getting
Richard.
I have a question.
Krista will go after-
Okay. Thank you.
After Richard.
Is it my understanding then that you're going to go along with this, with the recommendation that there's a removable fence on that section for the sliding?
Yeah, I don't think we've gotten that far yet. What we've established is we're gonna work with the plan and with the review of your minutes and the conditions that you have. Kristen?
Perfect segue. My question was back on the fencing and the sledding issue with Westfield. Maybe John can answer this. I don't understand how a temporary fence, and I'm not talking about a snowfield kind of fence, but like an actual true fence that can just be removed in the wintertime for that section of Westfield. How is that less effective than a permanent fence? Because like I said in my notes to you guys, you know, the dog thing, I don't really care either way. I get it. Actually, it's bad for the fields. But, you know, to not be able to allow sledding or to risk having people that are going to go sledding there anyway. I don't want to be home someday and have to deal, you know, with someone who got injured over there. And frankly, as a taxpayer, I don't want the town to have to deal with that liability. So could someone explain to me how a true temporary fence that gets removed in the wintertime is any less effective than this permanent fence that he wants up in terms of the dog issue?
Is there anyone here qualified to answer that?
Well, I mean, I guess I'm asking John because John seems pretty adamant that it's a big deal. The permanent fence is the only thing that will help. So help me understand that, John, please.
I would say that the permanent fence to enclose the fields, 100%. You are correct in my statement saying that will help. People want to encourage dogs, they're going to do it that way because it's going to be enclosed. We should make a field it's only got for dogs only. I guess I'm of the perspective that I'd like to build, and I think it's easier to sell and to build a house that's fully complete. And that is that it's fully enclosed, has fences on all 4 sides, 3 sides. If you want to look at the outfield with 1, third base and first base has another. So you'd have 3 sides to it. That's my perspective. I didn't say it was our board's perspective. I said it was my perspective.
Let me just jump in though. That's actually, I don't dispute with you about the fully enclosure. My question is, how is a temporary fence that's fully enclosing it during the summer months any less effective than a permanent fence?
So the temporary fence is not nearly as durable. It used to be done until it was sold at Scrap It one winter. We used to have I would call it permanent temporary fence that did just that for O'Brien Field, and we didn't get it up soon enough. And in the spring it was gone, and that's when we went to what I would call the mesh style temporary fences with plastic poles and so on and so forth. And those fences, unfortunately, we've been going through them at a very rapid pace, and it's very costly. It's not to put them up. It's not that. For me, it's the durability facet. It's that facet, longevity, the integrity of how that gets used in that regard. I hope that answered your question.
Kind of does. I'll just say this and then I'll go back to being quiet for a little while. I'm just not buying it. You know, in this day and age, the technology around everything, there's got to be a fence out there that's durable enough for what you need, that can be removed in the winters. In just that one section of Westfield, we're not talking about the whole thing, just the part where the kids and adults are coming down that hill so they don't crash into it. And also so that it sends a solid message that this is still a town recreational use. It is not solely being used and designed for baseball. You guys aren't out in there in the winter. Let's leave it open for some winter recreation for the town without anybody getting hurt. There's got to be a solution. There's got to be. And with that, I'll be quiet for a little bit.
Thank you, Kristen. And anyone else?
Just one of the things.
Sure.
The high school uses a temporary fence off of their permanent fence for their baseball. And seems to work absolutely fine. As soon as the season's over, they take it down and they have field hockey. In 1 second practices for the middle school stuff in another second. Where I came from before I moved back to Swansea, we had temporary fencing for the outfield, for the entire outfield. It was used each year, was taken down, rolled up, put in the shed, brought out in the spring for use. The durability of these is quite good. There's no reason why we cannot do the same thing for the next section. If you want to have hard fence 2/3 of the way along, as long as we can keep the sliding part open in the winter, late fall, winter, you know, a temporary fence, it wasn't.
Can you describe the temporary fence?
The temporary fence is, I believe it's probably 4 or 4.5 feet in height. It has a cap, a rubberized cap or vulcanized cap that goes across the top of it. It's set by putting poles in the ground. It's stretched to it and tied off. And as I said, as soon as the season's over, you come out, take it down, roll it up, put it in the shed, and put it away until next spring.
Is it all vinyl?
It is vinyl. The heavier duty vinyl.
Is it a mesh?
It is mesh, otherwise involved. But yes, no, it isn't.
And how do the poles, how are they anchored?
They are driven into the ground.
And those are vinyl as well, or?
No, those are metal. Those are metal poles.
So if I could interject here, we modeled our first fence off of that fence. And they're plastic poles, and we had, our problem is, number one problem is, our place is not, our place, the town's property is not, monitored. So as a result, it takes an enormous beating when baseball's not going in. So it didn't last. I think it was $7,500 was the first time we bought it. Replacement cost today is over $10,000 to do just what he was talking about in that outfield fence, not the 60-foot portion, not the 60-foot portion. The uniqueness today is that you can get things branded on us, which is an additional cost to help offset it. It doesn't help the durability when the place is not monitored. The wear and tear is Mr. Lane, Richard, right? Right, okay. It is not the wear and tear that happens in a winter months. It is the wear and tear that happens, let's say, April through November. Kids that are not there for baseball, kids that are not there for soccer, dogs that are just running around. We had a huge problem this past year because the deer ran and took a portion of it and wiped a lot of it out. So we went and replaced it. Fortunately, somebody told us about it. I'm not saying it's not doable. I'm just saying it's not long lasting, and it's a challenge to maintain, and it comes with a cost. And if you're going to look to do it every couple of years, it's a rather large expense when our annual budget, all things concluded, is somewhere between $90,000 and $100,000 for everything that we run through that place. 10% to do it on a 5% a year or 10% every 2 years is a substantial challenge in terms of the durability in that regard. We modeled it right after we bought from the same manufacturer. We had it delivered to Program Pines because they needed a forklift unloaded. Same place we were getting our nets from. So those are the types of challenges that I want to hear. I'm not saying it's perfect. I think Chad's got to come.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. For the record, Chad Brannon, civil engineer with Field Cell Land Consultants. We helped prepare the plans that John has on the easel this evening. I would say that our experience with temporary fencing at facilities like this can be somewhat unfavorable from two aspects. The security portion is a real big issue in off season, especially. I'm not so sure about in season when you have more activity going on. But on other facilities like this, I can't say it's happened here, but I just felt like this information would be good to share for consideration. Vehicular access, alteration, vehicle access, unfortunately, we have fortunately, we have a lot of younger kids growing up in this area, and if they can get onto a field, it can cause a lot of damage. Forget about the fact that these fences do wear out. And then just from a practical standpoint, I can say, my kids have had the great fortune of playing at this facility. And I've seen kids actually kind of get hurt playing around these temporary fences because the cleats tend to get stuck in them. They tend to kind of go, head over heels over them if there's activity near them. It's unlike a permanent fence that's a little more rigid and people are a little more aware of the surroundings. So I think, personally, I think considering the investment that's likely going to go on this property, hopefully, if this goes forward, rigid permanent fencing does secure the investment. I think if there's a number of times throughout the course of the season or summer where these fields are maintained. As you can imagine, just normal maintenance around temporary fence creates wear and tear that's going to occur much faster than one would like to, whether it's weed whacking or lawn mowing and so on. So it's going to be an ongoing expense. So I just think that should be considered in this particular instance. So thank you.
Thanks, John. Anyone else have any questions or comments?
About the fencing or in general?
In general?
Oh, I got more stuff. If we're moving on from fencing, just about the
Okay.
parking. So the plan is actually, I think John Blood mentioned this, it's a really good step. I think it does address a lot of longstanding issues. And on that plan, there's some specific no parking signs indicated. I know the planning board didn't require it on the plan, but I'm asking that the board instruct Swansea Cal Ripken to add a few more, and you'll see I listed them out. I think if I'm understanding what Mr. Houghton said, that even though the road is going to be grass now, that emergency access road, those gates are still going to be there, correct? To like keep people from driving through the grass area?
That's correct.
Okay. You would think it would be common sense, but there's common sense missing sometimes. I really think you got to put no parking signs on those gates. People are going to park in front of them. I'm going to try to parallel park. I really think that on the side of the maintenance building, on the Put Drive side, there's been people parking there in the past. Now that there's no drive through, that area is going to become kind of a turnaround spot. So I really think there needs to be no parking on that side of the maintenance building. And then if we could put either in a bucket with a post or on the very end of the fence, I don't really care, but just at the very end of where the existing parking is along that existing fence, people more than once were parallel parking there and quite frankly impeding on my driveway. So to the point where I could get my little car out, but there was no way an ambulance was going to get in there. So if we could have a no parking added there, that would be helpful, I think. And I bring that up just so it's all part of the conversation. And since it's somewhere on the plan, it would be good to get agreement on adding a few more. We can talk about that now if you want, or I can move on to parking monitors. You tell me.
We go ahead and move on.
Okay. I know it's in the current agreement about Swansea Cal Ripken doing active monitoring of the parking. Frankly, that has been spotty at best. I don't think the police should be charged with doing that unless it's an escalation. So it would be helpful to have a specific plan from the league in terms of how they're going to manage that monitoring. Most specifically, who and where do we go if there is an issue? Because that's been part of the conflict over the last several seasons. You wander over there, try to find someone in charge, and depending on who you find, you may get some attitude, you may maybe get some response. It's been hit or miss. And then back to my comment about the turnaround space with the blocking of the that through road. People are going to be turning in there off of South Road into where the parking is designated along the fence, and then the limited parking there along, I guess it would be Cole and Whitcomb Field. there's not going to be a lot of room to turn around over there. So I think it would be good to frankly mandate that there's some kind of volunteer or somebody from Swansea Cal Ripken directing traffic in that turn and keeping an eye on. If there's no spaces in there, tell people to keep moving down to the parking lot instead of having people turn in, try to turn around and come out. I mean, because it's going to become a bottleneck. That was what I had on parking. You'll see on my notes that I have other questions around tournaments and kind of the schedule of the project plan, but that's what I had for comments on parking.
Discussions with regard to those other issues really aren't germane to our meeting tonight.
Okay, that's fine. We can
Uh,
perhaps schedule another meeting.
When their agreement comes up for renewal, that would be an appropriate time to bring those comments up.
About the parking or about the tournaments?
The tournaments and I've forgotten what other thing you said, but it was tournaments and something else. But we're just here tonight with regard to this. And I believe their agreement runs through next year. Is it through into 24 or into 23?
Through the 2023 season.
So they'll be coming back towards the end of 23, beginning of 24, we hope, to renew, and that would be an appropriate time to discuss activities on the field.
Okay, so I hope we can talk about the parking because that is directly related to this plan. The other thing that I said was the schedule. I think that was around the project plan schedule because they said that they'd said at the planning board meeting that, this was kind of like the global plan, and depending on funding, it might not all happen at once. So could we get some idea of what's going to happen in what order on the plan?
Okay.
You wanted to address that.
I thought we had addressed it, but I can tell you that if we were to do the two backfields, we have to do the front parking at the same time. There's no place to park the cars otherwise. So they have to be done parallel. Other than that, there's some of the fencing and some of those aspects are gonna come as donations come, but we're gonna do our very best to get it done. We're gonna no parking signs along the South Road. I'll let Chad talk to it, but I thought we had addressed it the last meeting.
Yeah, I think that what we had talked about at the last meeting was, if, what I envisioned, I think this is what I shared at the last meeting, if I'm not mistaken, is that they're likely to do one of the big fields back here and then the parking improvements at the same time. And Westfield might stay in its current configuration until funds are raised to do the work on Westfield, or it could be O'Brien in the West first, but I'm guessing that there's definitely the parking needs to be addressed on some level, and then they're probably going to focus on one of the fields. To do two of the fields at the same time would be, unless people are very generous and fundraising goes really well, I think that it's a little bit of a stretch to expect that. So we shared at the meeting that there likely would be one field, and then the parking improvements would be done at the same time. Is that a fair assessment?
Could we maintain a soccer field somewhere while you do this?
Yeah, I mean, the soccer field actually, if O'Brien, part of the reason why I mentioned O'Brien is O'Brien has the biggest outfield area. So this soccer field actually fits in the outfield of O'Brien if need be. It would just be a small section that would clip the far outer limits of the infield area. So that would still be, obtainable. Absolutely. That is something we looked at when we positioned the fence along the outfield of O'Brien, is to make sure that we could, provide ample space for other sports.
So the issue of the soccer field is no longer an issue.
Wait.
I think he was just talking about during construction.
That's
Well, but isn't that the soccer field there?
Yes,
so that.
it is, but that's the soccer they do not want to see there.
I'm sorry?
They don't want to see it there.
No, but it's there.
It is,
And it
yes.
can be accommodated.
It can be.
Then it's not an issue.
Well, if we put up temporary fences. it can be
No,
accommodated.
there was no comment about temporary fencing.
No, the temporary.
Temporary fences would have to go through the middle for the first base and third base fields.
He's talking about this, like the fence that.
If we did a temporary fence here, you
Yes,
Yeah.
that was. They're going to see it as perfect.
Okay, well, we're gonna come to an accommodation because we're gonna have a soccer field.
Well, yeah, we're gonna have a soccer field, we're gonna have a temporary fence. We need to look into the temporary fences. I have honestly tonight, we've heard anything about temporary fences. That would allow me to say that's a good idea, that's a bad idea. I think you gotta look into it and you gotta do it. And frankly, Scarlett, this has gone on too long.
Past your bedtime?
Past my bedtime.
Wow.
I think everybody has had a chance of talking. And I think it's a rehash of a rehash.
John, is there, I think Kristen brought up a good point with regard to the back parking, because it does create an issue. There's only 12 spaces there. Could those 12, no, where Chad is. Yeah, I think having utilized that general area, it does become congested. And then if somebody's trying to pull in, then they got to figure out a way to turn around to get out. It would seem to me to make more sense to have all your parking in one area, even if you end up losing 12 spaces.
I think she was talking about parking, I think she was talking about that. So the idea was where the truck drivers, I think that's where she wants to eliminate the park along the maintenance center, correct, Kristen?
Yes.
Yeah, but in terms of the parking monitors, Bill, you're right about those 12 spaces along the fence of the ball field, but there's still the existing like 15 or 17 spaces along the fence line. And it would be a shame to lose that. I think it's fine to have parking over there. I think we just have to have a new plan to manage it, so people aren't pulling in when it's full and getting stuck.
So I don't want to put words in her mouth, but she's concerned about having that gate there, having cars parked here, and not having a way to turn around and truck driving get back out while utilizing these 17 spots.
I'll help you out with this, Kristen. I think she's just saying the no parking signs
Right.
there.
Yeah,
But
which are already
then-
existing here.
What she doesn't want to see happen, and I don't either, is have people pull in for a dozen spots and they're full. And then they have to get out
Right.
while everybody else is trying to get in.
Fair enough.
So if we could just direct all the parking to the big lot. And I don't know how you arrange the other. Maybe you could rent them.
Maybe we just make it coaches parking.
I think it could be coaches and umpire parking. I mean, it's near the maintenance
There you
shed
go.
where the equipment is. I think that would, and certainly there could be, a temporary sign that gets placed at this entrance that directs people to this parking lot. I think that's reasonable. And, I think adding a no parking sign on the gates is a reasonable request as well.
Thank you.
As far as the parking over here, part of the reason why we didn't want to get rid of this parking was for the occasional, handicap, patrons that come to the game. It just puts them closer to the fields. But what we could do here, Mr. Chairman, is blank out another spot at the end of the parking area so that there would always be a place for somebody to turn around. We located this so that it's behind the mature trees, so we're able to maintain all those nice trees in that area, which would offer some protection to those vehicles, but also, really maintain that nice landscape there. But the thought was to try to have some parking closer for those that, that need it. That was the intention. What I've found over time, unfortunately, just from being on this site, I think there's clearly a parking issue here, is that, people are forced to park down the center and they typically move whenever they can because of the likelihood of, of damage to vehicles. So I don't think this is going to be the ideal place for people to park, unless they have to for, an occasion to get, relative to, to a field or not. But that was the main purpose of maintaining those.
Lost a windshield there 20 years ago.
You still remember.
Oh, yeah, I remember that one.
All right, anyone who hasn't had an opportunity, have any question or comment? I think what we've decided is that we'd like to see you come back and with a full exploration of the temporary fencing, a clear indication of where that could be located. We want to accommodate it the field for soccer. We want to accommodate, we want the field to accommodate the sledding. So is there anything else that you mentioned?
No, I think that pretty well covers it.
All right, so we'd like to see that on the plan. Everything else, I think there were some very good suggestions that people made, and you seem more than willing to utilize those. And that the parking seems to be the maintenance of the parking and management of it. But I think that probably comes in under the agreement that they have.
And that would have to be readdressed and when we redo everything, because right now we currently, I don't think have a direct statement in it on who maintains the parking spaces or things like that.
We can discuss it, but I suspect the board would be supportive of having signage with regard to animals on the field. I remember seeing something in the minutes with regard to designated smoking area. That is not going to happen. And I think if you all could be more cognizant of people who are doing that on the neighbor's property, that would be helpful. But we're not going to have a smoking area here. We don't have it on any other town facility, so it won't be here. So
One quick question,
Yeah.
how wide an area is the outfall from the sledding? Are we talking 50 feet to give a good safety?
I would say, so right now, how they come down the hill, it is probably about the distance of like the soccer field, which is about like 150 feet, like that's if they're going like good, like.
Well,
into the-
I'm saying how wide an opening does the fence need to have in temporary for where they sled?
Yeah.
6 feet.
And you too, when you look at the location, you can really see there's that lovely big tree, there's two little like lanes that come down on that far side or over by Mill Lane.
So you could have hard fencing to a point and then
Mhm.
fill the gap in the spring.
There would have to be some caution signs on the permanent fence, so that little Johnny doesn't come down through there.
But you know, little Johnny is gonna go. You know that's gonna happen.
I've got my shit.
Chad, you have any additional comments, questions? John? Anybody else?
You can remember when you were a kid.
Thank you, Richard. Appreciate
That was a
your.
long time
Thank you.
ago.
Can I ask the board, the opportunity to have an entire large soccer field program run 4 nights a week with extra money that cover? That's my one question.
I can show you my hours worth of research and opinions on it if you'd like me to put in a presentation format. I've spent a lot of time I literally have this and Brown in the front seat of my car with my soccer fields mapped out on like puzzle pieces with that.
Okay, we'll look forward to that.
Fantastic.
I
Thank
guess
you.
it could be electronically, so we could look at it.
Yeah, a lot of it's just notes right now, I know, but I can get it all condensed down into like.
Thank you.
Yeah, so we're using the soccer field area and that's on top.
Okay, next item on our agenda. Can we do them all in one?
I think so.
Hold on. Going so fast.
Over here.
I'll make a motion to approve the nominations.
Did you want that back?
Yeah, I did. Thank you. Thank you, guys.
A, B, C, D, and E.
Something like getting
Second.
appropriately. We're asking
Sweet as a knee.
to do research on temporary. And do research on accommodation for soccer fields. And confirm or- and Labor Day. Is that correct?
No, not specific.
And Ashley.
Slide.
And Ashley's. All
You had
right,
an E.
motion,
Oh, yeah, E, Southfield Brownfield Advisory and my family. I think he's an okay guy, but you want to pick them apart one at a time because,
Oh, is that in?
Keep it under an hour.
In a double struck?
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, how did that?
and motion made and seconded. You have that, Beverly? This is for all the nominations.
A, B, C, D, and E.
Want them all combined, Michael?
With gratitude
Okay.
and appreciation.
Yes.
Anything else? All in favor?
I,
Okay, so Next item is consideration of proposals for the recycling center stormwater management plan. Michael, do you want to talk to that?
We'd like to go with, asking some land consultants for the amount outlined in their proposal.
Did we have any other proposals?
From Underwood Engineers. Sorry, I was gonna die here and the plug didn't work, so. Back in action.
So what's the total dollar amount?
Each $2.
Maybe you think any flexibility on that?
I don't think,
Any-
I don't think you had any permit fees or anything, so I don't think we need to. Build in,
No blueprint printing.
yeah, I mean, if you want to put in a little bit for printing, so 13,800.
13,800.
That's what, and that's with Fieldstone.
Correct.
All right, so you wanted 14?
Sure.
I'll second that.
Yeah. Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. The consideration of proposal to paint the Thompson Covered Bridge.
So you have that proposal there from Phyllis Tree Service.
And we're
Director.
providing primer and paint.
We will be.
So
What kind of price is that?
exactly, so I started working on this last year when Mike told me he had some bunch of.
When I had $25,000.
And I met with Catamount, a company called Catamount out of Vermont, the local paint contractor, directed me to them. And I spent about an hour with the guy, and his cost for labor and scaffolding alone, not even paying the bridge, was going to be $8,000 to hang scaffolding off. It was gonna require engineering, just how much weight they can hang off the scaffolding, and that wasn't even getting into the labor of painting, so I quickly realized that we weren't gonna be able to afford that option. So I started exploring other options. John Driscoll, who owns Phil's Tree, used to own a painting company, so he's got some knowledge of painting, and I asked him about this knuckle boom truck he has, how far it would reach. He took a look at it and he told me he thought he could do it. However, he needs to rent a special lift because you can't get all sides of it. And one of the substantial costs for the project is $22,000 for the 2-week rental on the lift. And if he goes a day over the 2 weeks, it's you pay for the month $44,000.
And then we got weather.
Yeah, and weather, so if he tells me if he can get it done in 7 days, which he's hopeful he could, it would be approximately $10,000 less. So it is pretty substantial. I just haven't been able to come up with any other possible option to paint the bridge. It's severely in need of it.
Yeah.
Painting costs, the paint, the primer and this paints somewhere in the $4,000 to $6,000 range for that and other incidentals. But there's no other option I've been able to come up with.
How's the roof?
I don't know exactly how the roof, when they get up on it, they have a better look at it.
It's a
But
metal roof.
I believe it's
What is
metal.
it?
Yeah, we've been having a lot of challenges with the boards popping up lately, so to take a closer look at that, we're just kind of maintaining and getting them in place, but they're popping up on a regular basis.
It's for vinyl.
So, but I realize it is, like I said, a pretty substantial cost, but I can't come up with anything else. The whole reason why, and I was initially was gonna have our crew paint it if he could use his crane with a work bucket. He's the one that come back and said he could do it with a knuckle boom. We talked with the insurance company, and said he couldn't have our guys paint and use the boom truck. So unfortunately, that was the only option you could come up with.
So we're basically looking for about 70,000.
Is that paint? I think it's been under 30 years. Something, right?
They have
1990?
a containment system.
Yeah, well,
Catch any.
93, I think it was.
But, yeah, that's what I was just wondering when it was rebuilt. I'm guessing that was the last paint, right?
Yeah, I think it was 93.
So 29 years. $3,000 a year.
Yeah, I'm afraid if we let it go too long, it's just gonna.
How much to put in a couple culverts and pave it?
Oh, yeah, that's gonna go over well. You don't have to worry about real-life. All right, anything else? No other options.
That's what I've been able to come up with.
We got other bridges. You know.
That's fine.
The other bridges I think will be somewhat less challenging, but this will kind of be a trial, and I don't know if we go for a target every other year, trying until we get them all painted, but.
Oh, this is the Thompson Bridge specific.
Yes.
Oh,
Permit and build it. Road out there.
We'll
Cut it in half.
With rock.
Yeah, and then bring it over to the right side.
So there's a motion need to include that we're providing the paint, primer and permits.
That's what the estimate was.
Yeah, I think as long as you include the total amount, that'll be fine, because it's general enough that it's for the painting of the Thompson Covered Bridge.
Yeah, but it is the permits, yeah. Okay.
I don't think, I think we determined there weren't any permits required, correct?
Yes, yeah, I talked with Barbara Scully, and she said as long as there was a containment system used, we were fine.
Looking for 70? 70,
Yes.
Okay.
and maybe substantially less if they can do it in a week.
Yeah. Now, like I said, I'll even offer up some help with labor on our end if we can speed that process up, because it is $10,000 less, so.
And then
Cruz
the
brothers
motion,
love working on weekends.
motion.
Yep, second.
Motion made and seconded, you've got it, Beverly. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Let's have it. Thank you, Joe.
Thank you.
Consideration of proposal to design the Arrowcrest Drive Fire Pond.
So we have the show's expert work. We've completed the old Richmond Road fire pond and now moving on to designing the next one that was prioritized by the whole subcommittee that Matthew and the fire department worked on a few years ago. So this is getting started on the next step. The fire department went out with their boat and did some depth checks, because the key is to make sure the existing pond is deep enough to have adequate capacity, and they feel, Charlie feels based on what they found, it has that. It's worth continuing to pursue. So the next step would be like a field survey to continue to evaluate the pond and then get into design and permitting.
Do those culverts meet the definition of a bridge?
I don't know, that culvert there should be replaced at that pond, and I told Michael, depending on the scope of the work, I would consider our crew doing it, but I'm a little concerned with that one, and maybe we may not have the resources to be able to do it, but that cross pipe there should be changed while they're going in.
20 years ago, they put a telephone pole through it to clean it out. It's pretty impressive when it's shot. through the wire. Came out.
Imagine, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I did ask Charlie if he thought that would be problematic from like a fish passage issue, and he said where it's really just holding back two sections of the same wetland, he wasn't too concerned with probably just being able to replace it in kind with hopefully concrete or plastic or something that would last longer, but I don't think we'd get into like Hale Hill Road where we had to come up with like open bottom.
I think it could be just a simple plastic pipe to replace what's there. That work we could definitely do. I just think that pond needs to be dredged. I think deep water, it's gonna take a lot more resources than we have.
It's a beaver protection.
So this 22,000 is just the exploration of the work that needs to be done.
That would be full design permitting bidding. I had lowered it a little bit and then added in permitting costs to make it 20, but then with Joe's comment, maybe we want to build in the bidding and the total amount, and then we can always not spend it later versus having to, otherwise I have to remember to come back if we end up bidding it and don't want to, have to come back if needed. So if you want to round up to 25, that'd be a safe, would cover all the permitting fees, and we would hope not to spend it all, but.
Make the motion.
25.
Yeah.
Is Duane King the only one that proposed?
They've who we've been using for the dams and the fire ponds, so we could solicit other proposals if you want. I think the last one seemed to work out well with them designing it, so. I'd say stick with them. It seems to be working. Charlotte's good to work with.
Okay, motion made and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
May expenditure and revenue report.
Looks good. Those are about to be
Thanks, Joe.
so much more
Thank you.
frequent. We're getting very close to being up and running with our new software. We have department heads doing trainings tomorrow, 2 sessions, so it'll be pretty soon. You'll be able to have instantaneous budget updates, and it'll be pretty sweet.
Great. Any old business?
Not at this time.
Your update?
Still pending.
Okay. Any correspondence,
Nothing of note.
non-publics?
Yes. Two.
Okay. Anything else from the public? Charlie, welcome to your first meeting.
Thank you.
Yeah, welcome. Good to see you. Thank you, Sarah. You had enough? Thanks. Any insight before we go into non-public, which means you get to go home?
I'm just taking it in.
No, we appreciate it.
Happy to have you.
Thank you.
Josh is on vacation this week, huh?
Yeah. We didn't burn the place down.
Yeah.
Not even the brush pile?
No, we're actually thinking of having paying to have tickets sold when we fire that up.
There you go. Marshmallow roasting.
Hot dog truck, hamburger truck,
Good idea.
I heard you got 43 tires in one load.
No, we turned it for us.
I told him that was a bit much.
Can I just say one thing? From what I hear from the public, they'd like to know if we're gonna send out the price sheets, like a little mail. Because they're all looking at that sign Josh put up,
Yeah.
the new prices, and they're all,
Oh, we post it, right?
yeah.
When's your next uncovered going out?
December.
Would it be included?
Yeah, we got absolutely.
Because, you know, I'm out there and I hear the people saying,
Yeah.
and then I say to them, well, Josh told me you can go online. I don't have a computer.
Maybe we could get some printed up
So,
to have in that drop, or one of those drop file things that they used to have on 5-1.
Yeah, I'll talk to him when he gets back. Good idea.
What are we going in under?
Hey,
Make a motion to go in under A for non-public.
second. Colby, Butt Walker, Karazinski.
Hey,
All right, Charlie, this is your cue. You get to depart.
goodbye.
We appreciate you coming in.
yes, thank you.
See you Saturday.